also be in that same email that's going to come out to you, certificate of participation that you can fill out for your times and sessions that you spent with us, and the links for other sessions in case you can't attend them live. Those will be available. Our next to introduce today's session, Raising a Color Brave Community, and our speaker, Dr. Nicole Russell. Dr. Nicole is an early learning professional who has over 20 years of experience caring for, loving, teaching, and working on behalf of young children. Her education background includes a bachelor's degree in early childhood education, a master's degree in early childhood and early childhood special education, and a doctoral degree in educational leadership. Her favorite role has been as an early childhood teacher. She has also been a child care center director, a professional development coordinator, a state director of special education, a state deputy superintendent of early childhood education, and an educational researcher. In all her work, Nicole tries her best to choose the margins, a phrase learned from Linda Tuhiwai Smith, and be a voice for Indigenous, Black, and other children of color who are often excluded, neglected, or otherwise overlooked. At Embrace Race, Nicole is a facilitator for the Color Brave community, an online community of learning and practice where parents and educators to young children, 0 to 8 years old, learn from and with each other to create spaces that nourish Black, Indigenous, and other children of color. So welcome, Nicole, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be with you today to talk about Embrace Race and raising a color brave community. You'll learn more about both of those terms, like who is Embrace Race and what does it mean to have a color brave community. By the end of this session, I'm hoping you walk away saying, oh, I could tell someone else about this. But before we get into that, I always feel it's essential that people know who I am, particularly because I'm entering your space. Some of you may be familiar with one another. You are familiar with, or may be familiar with, our hosts who are gathering us today and who put on this convening, but you don't know me. So I'd like you to know a little bit about me so you understand my perspective, my lens, what brought me to this moment right now to be able to come to you this morning to talk about this project that's near and dear to my heart. So the first most important thing for you to know is that I see the world through an Indigenous lens. I was born and raised in Hawaii on the island of Oahu. My mother is Kanako Iwi, or what Native Hawaiians call ourselves, the people indigenous to and of Hawaii. My father was from Birmingham, Alabama, a Black man. So I grew up in a home where things like racial and social justice were always talked about. I mean, one of the first words I ever learned was resistance. And that word has stuck with me throughout my entire life, this idea of resisting what someone else tells you you are and who you are and how to be, and really holding on to the identity that my family helped shape for me. I'm a sister. I have 5 siblings. That's important for me for you to know, because I think grounding myself in my family, that where part of my development is essential for you understanding the way I see myself. I'm the 3rd child. So I do have a little bit of the middle child thing where I'm always trying to be included, be a part of, insert myself into spaces, much like this, right? Like I'm raising my hand and saying, I'm here, I have a voice, I want to say something. So being that sister has been an important part of that development. I'm a mother to a 7, almost 8-year-old daughter who surprised me late in life and was a wonderful, welcome surprise. And she helps me right now stay present. Sorry, my AirPod fell out. Reminding me why this work is so essential. As children are developing their bodies, their minds, their hearts, what they think about the world, the important role of someone like me who's in a mother role, the importance of folks like you all who work with caregivers, who are working directly with families, who oversee programs where families are supported through other adults all on behalf of young children. And I recognize that even as a member of two marginalized groups, that I also carry a lot of privilege, right? With my privilege comes from being a heterosexual, cisgender woman in a world where those things aren't always, if you're not those things, they're not welcome or not celebrated. Recognizing that there is some privilege that comes with being as educated as I am, the doors that open financially, of being a US citizen, of speaking English, which by the way, wasn't my first language, but I got very proficient at. A lot of privilege comes with those things. So feeling responsible for using that privilege in spaces and places where I know folks who look like me and who don't look like me don't get to participate, that it's important that I remember that responsibility as I'm talking with, teaching, and learning from folks like you all. So that's just a bit about me. I hope that gives you a sense of how this is going to go and why it's so important for me to be able to talk about this topic with you all. So I was thinking about, how do we talk about this, right? This is a home visiting symposium. And I thought, what would be the most important things for you to walk away from this session with? And I think about things always as a researcher with questions in mind. And these are the three questions that help me frame what to put together and how to present it to you all today. So it's, what is racial learning? That might be a new topic, or maybe not new to you, but maybe you're curious about how we define that at Embrace Race. Why is it important, especially in early childhood education? And then what is Embrace Race and how can it help parents and educators? So by the end of our time together, these three questions should be answered for you. So what is racial learning? Here's the simplest way that we like to define it. It's really the how and what, children learn about race, including but not limited to the deliberate efforts of adults to teach children about race, things like racial socialization. It also includes the things they pick up from the messages that they encounter in the environments around them. So racial learning really just is all those different ways that children come to know about race. And when we think about early childhood education, and what research has told us for decades, is that during this critical moment in time is when children are forming their ideas and the foundations for what they will tie new learning to. And so as children grow, their sense of racial identity, how they view and feel about themselves and members of other racial groups change over time, but those beginning foundations start early on in their lives. As caregivers, as teachers, as folks who work with caregivers and teachers, as folks who work directly with families, we have power, right? There's power to provide a solid foundation to help them know and love who they are and where they come from. That being said, there's also a counter to that, right? There's no such thing as having no effect. So if we're not helping them come to know who they are and love who they are they picking up messages that send something different to them, that they're not worthy of love, that they shouldn't be proud of where they come from, right? So there's that opposite part of this that's an essential part of racial learning. Additionally, we really feel that by sharing stories, teaching, learning about different cultural backgrounds, putting racial differences into a positive light, and then sharing things like books, videos, podcasts, comics, all these types of media that celebrate children of color, their features, their cultures, their hair, their lived experiences, can help ensure that the emotions that they might experience around race are not just negative ones because of what they've seen either in the news or heard through commentary provided by community members, but that they can feel joy, they can feel pride and a sense of belonging, and that they feel empowered to dream big, to know that the future can be a positive one. Because they'll hear over their lifetime, over and over again, that they may not be worthy, that they might be less than. And these might come in intentional ways and also in unintentional ways. When they learn about their histories, they may feel they may feel bad about that. And they'll hear that over and over again. So we're talking about how do we counter that, right? We've got to give them enough of the good stuff so it can help them persist, even if it sounds like and feels like all is bad. Usually we talk about this topic, a question that comes up for folks, at least in my experiences, people will ask me, how can I talk to children about race? They're so young. They don't even notice race. They don't talk about that. We all are here. We love each other. I love all of them. That's all they need to know. Well, one of the things that we have to do is dispel those myths, right? So I want to do a little bit of trivia with you all. Maybe trivia is not the right word. I'll do some questioning and I want to know from you what you think the answers are. And there is no, I'm not going to quiz you. I'm going to ask a question. If you have an idea, you can respond to it in the chat. If you want to take yourself off mute, you can do that, or you can choose to be quiet and just wait to hear some information. I'll leave that up to you. So the first question is, at what age do children notice difference in skin color? Anybody have an idea or a guess or no? I'll tell you, 6 months. At 6 months, research has shown us they notice differences in skin color. Now, at what age did they show awareness of family structure and economic differences? That happens at around 4. Right, and this one always surprises me about economic difference. They notice that at about 4 years old. How about when they start to notice and comment on gender differences and make observations about racial differences? I see we had some, oh yeah, some folks said before 4, some said 2, yeah, 2, right around 2 years old. At what age do they show curiosity about what parts of their identities are permanent and what will change? I see we got a 3. Yep, between 3 and 5. That starts to, there's awareness of that in young children. And then finally, when do they start to ask questions about their own and others' characteristics of gender, language, physical abilities, and racial identities? That also is at 3. So when folks ask me that question, how can I do this when they're so young? My response is they're young and ready, right? They're ready. And so it's a matter of us deciding how to do that. And to give further underscore that idea about why children should learn about this earlier, I wanted to do this activity with you all. And it's an activity that's adapted from the book called Don't Look Away. It's written by numerous authors, including Dr. Ioma Iruka, Dr. Stephanie Currington, Dr. Tanya Darden. I think there's 2 more folks, but this activity is adapted from their book called Don't Look Away, and it's called Diversity in Children's Social Worlds. And why I like this activity is because it highlights how talking about race isn't just about the child's race, but it's raising awareness for them about other folks' races, their ethnicities, learning about difference that normalizes that for them. And what this activity does is it helps us reflect on what are our own learnings about race and ethnicity. So I'm going to put on the screen some questions. And you don't have to answer this in the chat, but if you have a note piece of paper nearby, or even if you just want to make mental notes in your mind, I'll ask the question. I'll give some time for you to think of the response. And there'll be, I think, 5 questions. And when I get to the end of that, I'm going to have you reflect on what you've noticed. And that's when I'll ask you all to share just what are your noticings about your own responses or how it felt to do that exercise. So here's the first question. Who are your 3 best friends? I want you to think about their racial makeup, their identities, their ethnicities. Think about those 3 people that you're closest to. The next question, who was the last guest invited to your house for dinner? Who makes up the majority of families you serve or work on behalf of or work with? And then who are the majority of your colleagues? Now, when you look at your responses, what do you notice about them? And I'm wondering if anyone would like to share what they're noticing about their responses. I see a comment. Yep, a lot of white middle-aged women. I see this one comment, people in my personal life are predominantly white and the people my program serves are much more diverse. Oh, I like this. I need more color in my life. Difference between work and personal life. All women, mostly Hispanic and Latin people. And really the point of the exercise, there's no judgment in that, right? It's just, are we aware of who we associate with? Who do we spend the most time with? And then when we show up in our professional work, does that influence the way that we see folks we work with, folks who we work on behalf of? Even if we're not aware of it, can we start to become aware, right? To raise the level of awareness and say, I wonder why I only have this type of group around me. What I noticed when I did this exercise was in my personal life, it's very diverse. I intentionally choose very diverse folks who my daughter goes to. My daughter's dentist is from Venezuela. Her pediatrician is from the Philippines. Her gymnastics instructor is an African-American woman, very diverse. And what it raised for me was, I don't include white people enough, right? She has a white dad and he's like the only person she sees regularly, he and his family, but we don't live near his family. And that was awareness for me on, oh my gosh, that's also part of how I expose her to diversity, right? It can't be only folks who look like her mom and who think like her mom. So for me, it was a moment of, oh yes, I have to intentionally work on seeking out what I'm not exposing her to. I'm looking in the chat again, just so I can see, oh, I see many more folks adding their comments. There's a combination. Oh, growing up in a mixed household with a brother who's Vietnamese. Yeah, I appreciate you all sharing your thoughts here. I'm just going to encourage you to keep thinking about that. If you happen to look up the book, Don't Look Away, you see there's a whole exercise. It has you think about yourself, has you think about yourself in your role, has yourself think about children if you work directly with children in the caregiving capacity. So it's really great questions for reflection that prompt you to think about how else do you help children learn about race and ethnicity and that of those who are around them. I saw there was a question about where the information on the slides came from. I didn't even point out at the bottom. I had the source was from the book Anti-Bias Education for Children and Ourselves. I might have that flipped around, but the second edition, and that's on the slide, and we can follow up afterwards. I saw Tekla said she could follow up with that. but the research is just from the body of research, right? So it's used in many different places, but those I particularly got out of the anti-bias book. So this brings me to talking about Embrace Race. Why Embrace Race? Who is it? How was it founded? I'm going to give you some background information. Then I'm going to take you to the Embrace Race website. I'm going to show you what's there. I'm going to show you how to use it so that you can develop some capacity to use that in your own work and go to it anytime you want to. So here's the mission of Embrace Race. It was founded in 2016. And it was founded by two parents who were meeting with other folks like them, not intentionally, they just happened to be at the same meeting, but discovered that they had many of the same questions. They're a multiracial family raising multiracial children in a predominantly white area. And we're thinking about, how do we do this? How do we do this well? And folks asking one another questions and recognizing there was a need, right? People expressing a need for this kind of information. And so what Embrace Race does is it organizes and creates resources, programs, and communities that parents, educators, and other adults need to raise children who are thoughtful, informed, and brave about race, so that multiracial democracy in the US can thrive. Here's a quote from one of the co-founders of Embrace Race, Andrew Grant Thomas, who said, "Imagine the power and possibility of building the field of children's racial learning as a recognized and valued pillar of a strong education. What would the world look like if a critical mass of kids of all racial stripes grew up with the racial sensibilities, tools, and analyses to remake education in this country, to remake politics, rethink our health systems, reconsider who we care about and why? If we can do that, that's amazing, that's profound, that's transformative." So the resources that Embrace Race connects folks to is really about transformation. What is possible, right? So we don't get overwhelmed by the state of the world as it is, which we can admit that for many, many folks, the state of the world is terrible, right? There's a lot that isn't well. But this idea that it's possible to create a world where everyone can thrive, where everyone feels like, yes, this is a place meant for me. And that's what Embrace is always working towards, the possibility that the future can be different. How? It's through identifying, organizing, and creating tools, resources, having discussion spaces that nurture resilience in children of color, that nurtures inclusive, empathetic children, raises kids who think critically about racial inequity, and then supporting a movement of kid and adult racial justice advocates for all children. I want to show you Embrace Race. Here's a QR code if you want to scan it so you can have it readily on your mobile device, whether that's a phone or a tablet. You can do that, but I am going to stop sharing here in a minute after I let folks have time to do that. I'm going to pull up the website. I'm going to walk you through it. If you see something on there you want to ask a question about, please feel free to take yourself off mute and ask, or to put it in the chat. I'd like this to be interactive, or else I'll just show you all the things I think are interesting and important for you to know. Let me stop sharing. I'm going to pull up the website and share that. Okay. So here we go. Will you tell me if you all can see that? Is that a yes? Great. So this is the Embrace Race homepage. Right across the top, you'll see what you can find on the website. There's the resources, community, there's an about, and contact, and there's a search. So the first thing I want to walk you through are the resources. What kinds of resources can you find here? So I'm going to go first to all resources. And what you'll see right here on the left side is an easy navigation system. There are types of resources, these things called action guides. So this is information curated to help you take immediate action on something. So I'm going to click on that and show you what types of action guides we have. How do I take action? The topic is this thing that's in bold: how to nurture friendships, how to talk to kids after incidents of mass violence, Here's one that I wrote a couple of years ago. It was called "You Can Do It: Talking to Young Children About Race." I'm going to pull that up, and this is what you'll find in most of them. There's something memorable at the top, right, to get you into the system. You can download the PDF in English or in Spanish, so you can save it. And then there's the actual information and content here. And so when I was thinking about how would I encourage someone to take action when it comes to talking to young children about race, these were my ideas, right? You see, they're big ideas. Do it in relationships, do it with your words, do it with your actions, and do it when you're not sure. So you, in the action guides, just find memorable bits like this. Oftentimes they're enumerated because we find people like things that have numbers, and it gives you a sense of, is that a lot of work or a little bit of work? And it feels more doable when you can count the number of things. But there's content under that. So it's not just about the one thing. What does that mean, do it in relationships? There's some information about what the author means under their little blurb. So action guides are like that. And that's different than an article, right? And I came back to this page that has filter by type, and then there are articles. When I think about articles, these are things that you would find that may not necessarily have action steps for you. These are about information sharing, right? So this one about resources for educators on children's learning, this is about the things you can use to help you do your job better. If you're working directly with children or on behalf of children, you can come here and it has a list of links that you can go to help you, equip you to do your job, right? So all of this is supposed to make you feel like you don't need to have all the answers. You just have to know where to come look for the information so you can support yourself as you're engaging in this work. Maybe you have curiosities about children's books. You come in here and you'll see there's a list of children's books about different topics, about different ways to expand storytelling with young children, right? So that's all here. One of my favorite types of resources that we have are these stories. And I love these stories for two reasons. One, you get to actually hear the people. And two, they're about intergenerational stories. So there are stories from an older generation and a younger generation. And to me, that's just beautiful, right? This idea that you can hear a story in the voice of the person telling the story that's beneficial for both generations. So I want to show you this one. So Hero Love Journey. Show you this one. You've got a family. This is a mother and a teen. And it says a mother and a teen take different paths to the same place. So you would come here and you see this little thing here. It has the story. I'm going to play just a few seconds of it. I wonder if we can.
I think you maybe didn't share your sound. We don't hear it yet anyway.
Oh, maybe I can't because it might come through there. Okay, well, anyway, there's a sound clip here. And then if you're a person who doesn't want to hear it or you want to read it while you're hearing it, you can do both, right? Here's the transcript below. But those stories are powerful to hear it directly from the folks themselves. And then we have webinars. So what are the webinars that Embrace Race has hosted before and what's upcoming? And you can come here and there's just a number of webinars. Here's one of our most recent ones, Fear of a Black Mermaid. Folks who, there's lots of conversation about The Little Mermaid having a Black actress. And so there was a lot of reaction to that and felt like there needed to be a space to talk about that. So that's all here. I recognize that having a lot of resources is great, but unless you know what you're looking up, it could be overwhelming. So then there's this other feature of the page that might help it feel more manageable. You can browse by topic. So if you go into the topic section, I'm going to come back here. If we do browse by topic, you can look at all the different topics. And what it does, pick one. This one, nurturing resistance and joy in Black children, or raising Muslim American children who thrive. When you pick the topic, what comes up is a curated assortment of all those types of resources. So it includes the webinars, the article, here's if it has a action guide. So it's put into one place, so you're not filtering through each resource. It's telling you, here's the package that we put together, and if you want to watch the webinar, watch it here. If you want to download an article, download it here. So it just organizes it in ways that might make it more user-friendly. Now, when you come over to community, what you'll learn in community are what are these focused communities that Embrace Race has for different purposes. And the one I want to highlight to you is the Color Brave community. Because the Color Brave community is the one that's about early childhood. This is an online community of learning and practice where we bring together parents and educators to young children, so 0 to 8 years old, to learn from each other and create spaces that nourishes children of color, those who embrace themselves as full human beings and others. When you look at the CBC page, you learn about who is it for, what do we offer. It says here we have a social learning group on Facebook. We literally are just moving away from Facebook to a different platform on May 1st. We're moving to Mighty Network, which we think will give us more opportunities for doing live gatherings and meetings and having events on that space, and to build a closer sense of camaraderie and community and belonging that's not on the Facebook platform. So we do have an online community that's thriving and that we're hoping more folks will join us in. We have a webinar series that's specifically about young children. Talking Race and Kids is the webinar series. And then we offer these communities of learning and practice. We call them seasons that we do them in, but these are a couple different, not even a couple. We now have 4 times a year where we offer opportunity to come join us in a community of learning and practice where we delve into a topic really deeply. The one that we just completed was a series on Dr. Barbara Love's framework, developing a liberatory consciousness. Like, what does that mean? How do you do that? We dissected that into a weekly format for 5 weeks, where we could have conversations in a small, safe space. Like, I didn't know that, or what does that mean? And questions for reflections and other resources that is connected to. So that's the Color Brave community. Also in the community, you'll see there's opportunities for you to volunteer with Embrace Race. If you're hearing things and you want to know, like, how else can I get involved? There's opportunities here for folks to volunteer, like what's available, what do we need, and who's a good fit for a volunteer, and that's there. So you can look at these different communities anytime you want to. I want to make sure that I have time to show you our About page, because you might be wondering, like, is this just for a small group of people? Who is this for? So I want to show you the impact that Embrace Race is having on our nation. This is information that came from the most current impact report, which was in 2022. You'll see here there were 63,000 plus hours of webinar views. That means folks who joined us on Zoom, who came to Facebook live events, who came to YouTube to watch the recordings of videos of webinars that they weren't able to watch live. There was 133% growth in the Color Brave community, right? That community for early childhood folks, both parents and educators. We had 400 plus people pilot this new Embrace Race content and programs. We had 3 times the growth in the core team. So from 2 staff to 6 staff members, 200 plus people engaged in our communities of learning and practice cohorts, and then the number of webinars that were made available free in the library. So it's an organization that's growing and thriving, and we still need more. We still can do more, right? So this is an invitation for you to join us. I want to show you the team. Here's the team, and so you've got folks who are part, folks who are part of the core team, and then you've got folks who are facilitators like myself. Here are all our little young This is when we were younger people. Here's mine down here. I was like 5 years old in this picture here. But when you click on them, you can learn a little bit about each of the folks who are on the team. What brings us here, what inspires us, what keeps us connected to the work. I told you at the beginning how strongly I feel that it's essential folks know who they're talking with and to and about. So learning about the team is a critical part of really understanding who the organization is and who and what drives us. Here's a national advisory team. If you're wondering like who helped contribute to the thinking of the formation of this group, these are some of those folks, and they might be familiar to you because these are folks who've been doing racial and social justice work in all kinds of ways for a number of years. So they may be familiar to you, but you can come on there and look at who's contributing. And these may be folks you've never heard of. You click on there, you can learn a little bit about them. So you can understand the depth and breadth of the thinking that's going into Embrace Race as an organization. And then there are supporters. If you want a job, here's the newsroom. So this is just an overview of how to navigate the Embrace Race website. If all else fails, go to search, put in your topic and see what comes up. It might be an article, it might be an action guide, something that gives you a sense of what can I get from the organization itself. So I stopped sharing because I want to know what you think. If you have questions about what you saw, if you just have some general comments about the organization.
I would just like to say, I think this is a great way to learn about the resource. I think a lot of times people, you get resources thrown at you and the expectation is, and when you have free time, you search this out and, so I think this is really great to go over it in such detail.
Oh, great. I'm glad that was useful.
Thanks. I see HD.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. I think that walkthrough, like Joe said, just like gets people more excited to actually click on or see things and says, okay, I know I want to read that one. What I was going to say is I think like I really appreciate having resources like this provided because I know that a lot of people, the kids they're working with, they respond kind of only to the demographic they're serving directly. I recently gave a presentation where folks were kind of talking about the populations of kids they worked with, and people were saying, well, I talk about this population because most of my kids are from that group. And I think that we forget we're trying to support kids going out into the world, and the exposure they have to people who don't look like them or live different types of lives from them will influence how they think about those folks and how they treat them as they grow up and as they become adults. So it's really crucial that it's not just, do you see yourselves represented in the world or in whatever program we're running, but do you see other folks and are you learning about them in a way that extends grace and empathy and respect? So I really appreciated this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your feedback. That's so important. That last bit you said, that it's the constant reminder that yes, it's important that we know who we are and children know who they are, but unless we can center that on, and what does it mean in our relationships with folks who are unlike us? And can we get to a place where we're comfortable about this? I found that over the years of doing this work, that can be difficult for our early childhood folks who really mean well, right? And really want a sense of this place is equitable. This place is supports equality and diversity and inclusion. But when we peel that back a little, right, we say, how can we ever get there if we don't acknowledge there's differences? And that we accept differences don't mean deficits, right? That there's an acknowledgement that we have varied needs based on our varied histories, our varied lived experiences. So I appreciate greatly that Embrace Race is intentional in saying, no, we're going to name the things, right? And encouraging us as early childhood professionals, as family members, to be brave about that because it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel risky, particularly if you work in a system where that's not welcome. Or maybe you're the one voice saying that it feels intimidating. It can feel like you're the one voice in a sea of voices and it doesn't matter, right? So it can also be discouraging. So this idea that there's an organization that has your back, that's there saying, tell us what you need, because if we don't yet have it, we can create that, right? We want to work with you on how do we give you the things that you need to do this well. And with that in mind, I want to share with you this resource that came out. This is our most recent work. I'll share. And this one, you can find it on the website. It was there under communities, but I wanted to show you what the PDF looks like. So when you download it, because it'll ask you to enter your information so you can download it. That's to help us know how many folks access the resource. But when you download it, you'll get the PDF, and this is what it looks like. And it's called Reflections on Children's Racial Learning in 2023. So it's a collection of essays, dispatches from the field, dispatches being something's happening right now and someone's telling us about that experience. And this happened towards the end of last year. Folks were writing these, contributing to this, and then it came out in 2023. So here's what it looks like in overview. There's an introduction, right? Like, what's the work that's being done to get momentum towards building this field to raise a brave generation? This idea of children not being too young to talk about race, we put that right at the beginning, that there's science that supports early racial learning. So those things that folks were commenting about on the slides, this is another place, right, where it says, here's what the science says, the research, the literature tells us about children and racial learning. And then you go into these topics here: parenting practice, education, children's media, health professions, social science research, and then a conclusion. So looking at this right away, you might have an interest in the parenting practice thing right away. You know where to go. What is that topic about? I want to know more about that. So you go there. When you go down, this part about gathering momentum, if you really want to get steeped into understanding how we're talking about building this field of racial learning and what does that mean, that this will give you good insight into that. When you go down into, there's that little blurb, right, about they're not too young to talk about race. This is done along the continuum of development. So another way to think about this and to talk about this, right? If you're a person who's having conversations often with other early childhood professionals, other families, and you want to show it to them, great visual, right, to put in front of them. When you get down into the parenting practice, you'll see that you can click on, or any of the sections, you can see that you can go to each one. This one's an essay, so it's a longer. This one's a dispatch, so it's shorter. And so oh, there's 3 short things and there's 1 long thing. And then you say, do I have time for a long thing? Maybe not. Maybe I have time for 1 short thing. So you can pick which one you want to start with. Again, design so that it works for you, right? Not having you have to look at all the pages to decide, is this accessible? It's just putting it out there in front of you so it feels like something you can get through in whatever amount of time you might have. So that resource, I'm gonna stop sharing so I can share my PowerPoint again. Oops. There it is. So here we go. So that resource has these 5 overarching topics. As a follow-up to this, I can send the link, Tekla, to you all if you all want to pass that on. If folks want to go right back to the Embrace Race page, like I said, it's in the community tab. You can also go there to download that, but I want you to have that because it has so much of the science embedded in it, and then voices from the field, people who are doing this in all these different spaces talking. So it's not just about theory, it's about practice. What are folks doing right now? And what are folks planning to do, right? What's coming next? I really want to know if you have questions. I know our time is winding down together, but for me, it's important to hear from you because your questions help me think about what else do you all want? What do you all need that would be useful to you in your work. So if you have questions or if you saw something that prompts you to think about something you need that wasn't there, I'd love for you to either put that in the chat or you can come off mute and just tell me.
I'm curious, something that you're really excited about or interested in around this topic that you didn't bring into the presentation.
One of the things that I'm super excited about is Mighty Network, and I didn't talk a lot about where that's going, but why it excites me is the opportunities for us as facilitators to have live conversations with folks. You know, on Facebook, we tried to do that and it wasn't very successful. We had a handful of opportunities where folks came and it was, you know, 1 or 2 people. And I'm thinking Mighty Network will be a better vehicle for us. And for me, like the interaction with people and feedback, even not saying that it's all positive, right? Because we have some really difficult topics to talk about, but the opportunity to do that more frequently with people excites me because I think when you can hear it from other humans, it comes across differently than if you read it. It just feels different. It feels like we're working on a problem and working on solutions for humanity, right? Like not to put in papers, but to help us live better lives, for us to feel encouraged that it's possible that our children and their children don't have to have a future that's just riddled with so much racial injustice, social injustice, that we can actually work towards advancing equity as a society. So it makes me super hopeful to think about opportunities for connection that can lead to a better future. Oh, great. I love that people are digging in already. That's really what I was hoping to, was like people feel like, oh, I can use this in my work. And because I just did a whole thing about Mighty Network, here's the QR code. If you want to join Mighty Network, there's no fee, there's no anything. You're not expected to do anything except when something interests you for you to participate in that. So you'll be invited to join us on live events, to make posts, to maybe you see things in your own reading or in your own conversations with folks that you think, oh, I really want someone else to know this. Come and put it up there. We have folks who do that all the time saying, did you guys see this? Do you know this? Can I ask about this thing that happened to me at the grocery store today? All of that is welcome in Mighty Network. And that's all I have for you all. I appreciate your time and your attention and your willingness to be part of this. And thank you for having me as a presenter today.
Thank you so much, Nicole. This was wonderful, and just appreciating everyone's feedback to you and their appreciation of you also. Thank you all for coming, and there will be a recording link put out, and we'll respond about people's questions about resources. Make sure we have the links to the things that we can share with you, definitely things from the website and that wonderful resource that you shared in the last little bit there, Nicole. So thank you all for being here.